Okay, welcome to the planning board meeting of February 7th, 2023. We have one absence, the chair is absent, so I'm filling in. The first item on the agenda is a jewelry sign permit at 47 East Market Street. And I assume you're the sign person?
I am indeed.
Okay.
This is a hanging sign for Adele Shafridi. You guys look at the, it fits within the square footage allotment. And I think the latest file, Ryan asked us to document the other signage on the fascia of the building, which would include the Allure Salon. They only have window lettering.
I'm not getting into your Google Drive here. What's the warrant public?
Oh, you were connected to the private.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Now you're connected to the public.
One question I had, since we're stalled here.
Sure.
When I looked over what you had provided, it appears that you sort of came close to maxing out your sign allotment for that building
For that tenant space.
between the jewelry store and the salon or whatever it is.
Correct.
What happens if the basement is rented out again for a wine bar or some other type of use? They won't seem to have any space for signage.
We actually work with that particular tenant right now, the Rhine seller.
Yeah.
And he did not want any exterior signage.
The next one might, whenever, might have a problem.
It's possible. I can only go by what the landlord and the client have told us to do. It's certainly possible for us to reduce the height of this, the square footage. A lot of the square footage is just negative space, basically, in the black.
Yeah. All right, so you can adjust.
We can adjust it. I can ask the client. I don't know that they're particularly set on a 16 by 24. It just happened to be the size that filled it out. Now, I used to work with the landlord a long time ago, but I haven't lately, and I don't know. I'm assuming the allotment for the square footage includes the downstairs, from what you're saying, includes the basement tenant, Allure, and Adele Shafridi in that frontage, and it's divided, sounds like unequally between the three. It seems like, I don't know what else they would have. I remember when Shelter was there, they had a fairly decent sized sign. It was at least 16 by 24 hanging there. So that might have been, that square footage there.
So is the basement occupied now?
It is.
Oh, it is. So there
It
is a
is.
tenant that doesn't want a sign.
They have some on their entry door inside the vestibule. They have a logo on a frosted glass. We kind of blanked out the glass with some frosting, and then we put just the Rhine Cellar logo on there.
Yeah, but it's it's on the interior, not on the door
It is on the
itself.
interior. It's not. I wouldn't consider it an exterior sign.
Right. I think if
I
it's
don't
set
know,
back more than a foot from the window, it's not considered.
Yeah, it's about 4 or 5 feet from it.
Yeah.
But, for that particular client, I talked to Costas, and he was going to open with that and see if he needed anything else. And so far, I haven't heard from him. I can inquire with the landlord and ask her, do you want to reduce the size of this sign to allow for some potential signage for the downstairs center, whether it's this particular.
I was under the
Less
impression
usual
that it
for
was
the-
vacant down there, and then there might be somebody coming in, and then they'd have to ask for a variance. But if it's filled,
They're there, but again, people change their mind, as you know. So I mean, it's a legitimate concern, and I don't think it would hurt the jewelry store if we took a square foot off of that. I mean, it doesn't reduce the size of the text. It's a very limited. We only really had one spot to put this with the facade. I hate that it's not centered, but it is what it is. The electrical junction box is there for the light, and the other thing that irks me is that the address number is not centered on that brick. So. But anyway, beyond that, those are things I can't really affect, but we tried to make this look as good as possible. I mean, if we could get approved at this square footage and then we choose to reduce it, I would imagine that there would be no need for us to come back to.
All right.
Okay. We would just submit updated drawings.
Okay. Yeah.
I think your point's good though, John, in that, if we approve this today though, and it becomes an issue in the future, new tenant, existing tenant, whoever that might be, it takes it from being a landlord-tenant problem and makes it a problem for us and then the zoning board to consider.
Right.
So I'm just wondering if there's not a reason for us to put some sort of landlord consent aspect into this approval, where the landlord knowingly uses up the sign for this one tenant and therefore talks to this tenant and says, if downstairs changes or needs a sign, you might have to alter what you're doing, or you might want to pre-alter what you're doing, so that everybody goes into it with their eyes wide open, so we don't have this burden on the town, the village to think about.
Yeah, you could certainly put that, because honestly, if we made that sign and we had to modify it, just cut the top and bottom off, repaint it, and put it back up, and whatever that excess square footage is, that would be allotted to the downstairs tenant. I think that's I think that's a very equitable way to do it. I hadn't really considered it, only because in the back of my mind I'm thinking Casas didn't really want a hanging sign, so not a problem. But I think from a long-term, long-term aspect, that's probably a really good idea. Can you put that into the minutes, or we can just
we could make it a condition, right?
Yeah, we can make it a condition of the minutes.
In terms of that building, there's a second and a third floor that don't seem to have any tenants at this point that could.
Right. I thought that was residential up there.
It is currently residential.
It is now? Okay.
Nicest
Again,
apartments in the village. I was up there once, and it's really spacious. It's amazing. It's a great apartment.
I was up there when it was Rhinebeck Hardware Store.
So if we put that in the minutes, I think would be good enough, as long as.
Yeah, just leave the issue.
Yeah, and I'll also talk to
landlord
Jill
consent.
there and say, hey, this is the situation. You have this sign as long as, the downstairs tenant doesn't want something, but you might have to modify it.
Okay,
I think she'll be fine with that.
all right. This isn't not going to be lighted. It's sort of above the light, isn't it?
Yeah, no illumination.
Yeah, if the light is on the directory sign for the courtyard.
Well, it's kind of on the address sign, but yeah.
I thought there was a directory sign there when I walked by today.
I think it's on the opposite side,
Oh, is it?
or maybe in the courtyard.
Okay. I think that's the reason they have the little 47 in the corner, because it has 43 next to it, and people would get confused.
Yeah. I'm still confused.
I think it's also for 911.
Yeah. But normally you put it by the door. They put it over in the corner because there's 43 on the side of the building.
Yeah, I think the issue with the door is there's too much glass, and the one set of doors opens beyond the stoop. So I don't think there's an actual place for it to be legible from the street.
Okay.
Here's the inlet by the door there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brian, you said they got permits for this letter.
The window lettering, yes.
Okay.
2 years ago.
All right. That's not a project that I was involved in at the time, but as long as it's legal, good for me.
Always amazes me when they don't say jewelry on signs.
Well, fortunately, they have enough space to put the product out there, so,
But anyway, that's your choice. I think
Does
the
the
sign
hanging, does the hanging sign say jewelry or not?
Below it, yes.
Yeah,
I'll find you
there you go. I guess that's why they need it.
Yeah, okay. Any other concerns or comments?
Makes sense.
Entertain a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion to approve the sign.
I'll second Darren with condition.
With the conditions so stated that if additional signage is wanted by downstairs or upstairs tenants, they're gonna have to come back and adjust. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is also you. This is kind of sad, I think. The name of the Rhinebeck department store is now gonna be changed to Rhinebeck Mercantile.
Yeah.
Is it the same owners or they're switching
No,
hands?
the new owners have, I believe they sold to employees. I don't know the full scope of it, but,
All right. But it is a new store.
yeah, but Dick and Barbara are finally ready to retire. I think it's the same store, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't think they're gonna change much. The sign is kind of falling apart, it needs a new one, but
Yeah.
this is a new sign.
Everybody had a chance to look at this one? It's essentially replacing the existing sign with an
Yeah.
Yep.
identical sign.
There was I think there were some questions about the lighting. And so there are existing gooseneck fixtures.
Yeah.
That predate, I think, even my residency in this town. They've been there for a long time. One of them seems to work at night and the other one does not. It looks like someone inserted a floodlight into it, which really should be changed to
Yes.
something
I
a
was gonna
little bit
suggest that.
more like an A19,
Yeah, a little bulb.
LED A19 replacement, something like a 40 watt, 3000 Kelvin
Right.
LED, which would look just fantastic and not hideous. And so much you get the other light working, so both of them come on and go off at the same time.
I was gonna suggest that the hood is much smaller than the bulb,
Yeah.
and it should be the opposite way.
Right, right. Yeah, that is, they really probably could use a new reflector, a little bit larger for the size of the sign, that is.
That would be an option.
I mean, I can ask them if they'd be interested in doing it because, those are relatively easy to change. And there's hundreds of them on the market. And if we need to paint it to match the green trim, we would do that. They don't look like they're in great condition, so.
No, they
I mean,
look really old. I've been looking at them and went by on the way here, and it's like they look 30 to 50 years old.
Yeah,
And on the right side of the building, even though it's not lighting, they got an electric plug on the outside of the building and it's not even ground fault, it's just a regular plug with a wire going over to the trees to light the thing, and then it's like all this electrical tape going down. It's not safe, it's not building code, and
well, this is an opportunity for you to, make some suggestions conditional. The new owners should they can bring that up to code. That doesn't seem unreasonable to me.
I mean, it's a beautiful building with just old, that don't fit anymore. They should, kind of be made to.
Sure. And I don't know that they're not, this is not my client, this is something that Tyson worked on. And I have a relationship with the previous owners, but I can go in and just talk them through that. I don't think they'd be opposed to it, I just don't think that they know that maybe they haven't realized it's an issue.
Yeah.
Or that it even is something they should be concerned about.
Yeah, like you said, I went by, one was on, Route 9 was not off.
Yeah. It would look a lot better, especially above a new sign. It'd be nice to have a decent light.
So the color we see there is gonna be what it is, the yellowish with the brick pattern?
It'll probably be the ivory. What we're probably, it looks a little yellow on screen, but I think what we're aiming for is that softer ivory color.
Okay.
Because that yellow looks terrible on screen.
I didn't wanna say it, but.
No, I'm telling you, it looks terrible. So it's not going to look like that. We're gonna shoot for something that's closer to the original.
All right.
So, I think it's important to do that just so it's not a harsh transition and people think that it's, I think that this business is more of a transitioning to a new generation, or I think they've sold to employees. I'm fairly certain they have. So it should look similar. That's why they're keeping the shape, but we could also keep the colors,
Okay.
which I think would go a long way to kind of easing the transition. But yeah, we would get a color match to that trim. And we also did detail out the rest of the signage on the building, each street side, and I think we're still within the limitations. And then we also took some side view shots of those banners in the window, which are deeper than what is required to count for exterior signage. They're kind of promotional banners and display windows.
So in the application here, the yoga sign remains, and you're replacing in point number 3B and C,
Right?
you're replacing those two signs that have this semicircle on the top
Correct.
with the same size, just with Rhinebeck Mercantile.
Yeah, just those two. Everything else is listed on there, just to arrive at the total square footage.
And it says proposed signs, 34 by 59.
Yeah, so the 34 by 50, if you go back, the one that says 1 East Market is a separate panel, so we listed that as the one that faces Le Petit Bistro's entrance has a separate sign underneath that just says 1 East Market. That's the way it is currently, so they've matched that.
So
See
you've got these two signs on either corner of the,
Right, the large signs, but underneath it says 1 East Market. We've listed
I
that
see.
as a separate sign panel because it's disconnected from,
okay,
it's disconnected from the main sign,
Right.
and it's absent on the other side.
right. That's the other side with no
Right.
other.
And the proportions are a little bit different too.
Right, there you can see both of them. Yeah, the one on the right, which goes along Market Street, is the one that has the 1 East Market. And these, and the yoga sign stays. What about these things in the window?
Technically, they're not considered signs because they're set back a certain distance from the
Okay.
glass. I think it's a foot, or maybe it's 18 inches, I can't remember. That you have to set back anything, and it's considered a window display instead of a sign.
Mhm.
12 inches. Can you go back to the calculations? Because I was confused by something. It's just not easy to do.
No.
So it says here, maximum sign allowed is 44, signage available 77. That doesn't make sense.
Well, I think what the issue there is, you can't really see it, but up on the, that's probably the type of it.
breakdown.
There's a little block of text out there. We're dealing this, the total 77.3 is the sum of the East Market and the Montgomery Street
And that's up to
frontages.
44 though.
No, above that.
33 plus 55.
Right there, this,
Yeah,
Yeah.
27
so 27 and a half and 16 and a half makes 44. So I don't know where they came up with the 77.
Yeah, this is,
Usually what's in that line is, after you add up all the ones you have, whatever's left, which is a smaller number, can be bigger than the number that you had in the first place.
So maybe Paul, I had a conversation with Jody, maybe the thing to do, because this is on 2 street frontages, to separate the two and
Sure.
do the calculation, so one for the East Market side and then one for the Montgomery Street side. And then maybe the math will be presented a little better or a little clearer than trying to fit everything on one application.
But if you treat them separately, then the Route 9 sign will be oversigned.
No, it shouldn't.
No.
It shouldn't.
You have 3 signs there.
Well, we do, but, that's true.
Probably
The
a longer
frontage is more
frontage.
though.
It's
I
probably
think
a
the
longer
frontage is
frontage.
more.
It
Isn't that the
is.
longer side of the building on the Montgomery Street
Yeah,
side?
no, I agree. This is the second time I've let somebody else. Sometimes I come and represent for people within our office that do these, and I don't get to look at every single thing that goes out of my office, otherwise I'd never sleep. But I will take a closer look at this. I can resubmit it. We can come back in a couple of weeks if you want us to with that, or I can email it to you tomorrow.
If you would feel more comfortable with that, or if the board would feel more comfortable with that, I mean, you guys can make a condition of approval that just the math is revisited by timely signs to make sure that it's accurate. I mean, the tricky thing with this is you're dealing with the corner property,
Yeah.
the corner commercial property, so.
I personally wouldn't have trouble approving the signs on the condition that the math adds up. And if the math adds up, they have to come back. That way, if the math adds up, they don't have to come back.
It's up to you
Everybody okay
guys.
with that?
Yes.
Yeah. The
Especially 'cause they're
lighting gets addressed.
Well, that's to be a condition too.
Yeah, definitely put that in there. I mean, it should be addressed at this time. Otherwise, it's gonna
So,
be
let me
terrible
suggest
for-
conditions. Number 1, either the bulb gets smaller or the hood gets bigger so that the light is contained within the hood. And that any wiring issues are looked at so that they're operable and up to code.
Okay.
And secondly, that it's approved with the condition that the form is corrected and the approved signs are within the allowed calculations. And
Would-
if not, they have to come back and
Okay.
readjust.
Would you guys be okay if I provided a sign permit application with something written in there like see next page, and I can actually detail it out for you? Or does it have to be used in the form? Because it is among one of the most, I should say, challenging to understand what's being asked.
I think we should put it on our form, figure it out.
Okay. If,
I can help you.
if it takes 2 forms, you're okay with receiving 2 forms?
Yeah, as long as
Okay.
the one we have is correct
Okay.
on our form.
Yep. I'm happy to do that.
So everybody okay with those conditions?
Yes.
Brian, you got them down?
We're okay.
Motion.
Go ahead. We're okay with just repairing the lights. We're not suggesting consider a replacement of the 2 light fixtures.
And the gooseneck.
I don't think they're,
I mean, they're appropriate for the building, just following up on Michael's point, they're starting to really show their age, and the canopies are starting to fall apart, or the
well,
connections to the building are starting to come apart as
well,
well.
I did say that they should be repaired and brought up to code.
Okay.
I think that's enough. Myself, I don't have a problem with the light fixtures themselves. They sort of look as old as the building.
Okay.
So is that the one that you're talking about that's plugged into an outlet? Yeah.
That one plugs into an outlet, and on the right side of Market Street, there's just a plug attached to the outside of the wall, and there's a wire going over the thing. It's not even
Christmas
grounded.
lighting.
Yeah, that really needs to be run in conduit.
Yeah,
And that can be done from that existing box. It shouldn't take very long, but it should be painted to match the brick too, so it doesn't look hideous.
And all this tree lighting thing is always jerry-rigged.
Yeah. Fortunately, it's all LED now, right? It's kind of,
Right.
that's good.
Should we take that bracket down while we're at it? The
Those
excess
are for
bracket.
plants, though.
Are they?
I think, yeah, I think they put hanging plants. They're
Okay.
not for sides. That one looks like it's kind of collapsed or broken.
Yeah. Okay,
Um,
so we have 3 conditions on the table. Match the bolt to the hood, fix the wiring to code,
Sure.
or upgrade it, and provide a sheet with the proper calculations. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second, Jeff.
So motion to approve, all those in favor?
Aye.
With those conditions.
Thank you, that's very fair. I'll have those forms to you probably tomorrow. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, third item on the agenda is 4 Summers Drive, Brian and Deborah in Lavender. There's a request for an area variance, and before it goes to the ZBA, the planning board gets to look at it for a positive or negative recommendation. Hello.
How you doing?
Good.
I'm glad I didn't wait till it's quarter to 8 to show up. I would have missed my bid.
All right.
Brian, I don't think they have this, correct?
Correct.
They don't. I'll pass it around.
So, why don't you explain why you're here and show us where the fence is?
Well, that's no problem. I'll even show you where the fence is.
Okay, we've seen pictures, but
Right, you've seen
just
pictures.
explain
All
to
right.
everybody.
I'm here for a variance in regards to the height of the fence. Apparently, it's over 6 foot high. Now, I disagree with that because the fence is 6 foot. But when you take the posts into consideration, the posts with the 2.5 inch light caps that are on top of it and the bottom of it that goes into the ground 4 feet, then all of a sudden, if you measure it by the grade to the top of it, you come up with different numbers. So your 6 foot and my 6 foot aren't equaling one another. So let's take a step back, all right? The fence is 24 by 158 feet by 16. The neighbor on my right side has that's 75 inches. All right, that's from the grade to the very top of the light fixture. 75
Of
inches.
the post fixture.
Yes, correct, all right. If we go to the the left-hand side, if you're facing the high school, the left-hand side, that is 84 inches. And the reason being is because the property is on an elevation. The neighbor on the right-hand side is on kind of like a bluff or something,
Right.
and it actually slopes down. So my wife goes, I want it level. I don't want the fence to slope down. That's why I have a fence that looks like this. The fence started out to be 5 feet. Then my wife goes, no, I want the header put on top of it. And the header is the lattice part that's showing right there. In front of the fence, there are cobblestones, which you can see. Those cobblestones are 7 to 8 inches thick. They're all reclaimed from New York City and Queens, if anybody wants to know that. The reveal on those cobblestones are 4 inches. Now that's important because originally my wife or my contractor asked Justin if we could fill that in with mulch. And Justin goes, no, doesn't make a difference. The mulch has nothing to do with the height of the fence. Well, I beg to differ, because if I can put 4 inches of mulch in there, all of a sudden you're not going to see that gap there. So that's just my opinion. You guys are the ones that make the rules. All right? I went over that. This is based on elevation. And another thing, I had a post and beam fence before this that was falling apart. Now, if you look beyond the fence, there's a high school there. Now, I cleaned the high school property. It's, in the past, I've literally taken a bag of garbage up to Joe Phelan, when I was a superintendent, and put it on his desk happily. Because I'm the guy that cleans it, because there is a right of way back there. Now, before, when I had the post and beam fence, I also had probably 20 to 30 feet of forest in front of me when there was a cinder track. There's no longer a cinder track. They put a fence up, that's fine. But between my property line and that fence, I'm the guy that maintains it. Not my neighbor on the right, not my neighbor on the left. Brian maintains it.
It's
Right.
school property though, between the two fences.
Right, and I also prune the trees. And I've asked Sheldon to do it, it doesn't get done, so I have to take matters in my own hand. So I clean that property up like it's my property, even though I do not own it. And that's why that fence is that size now, because I don't want any cowpoke walking around in the back of my house that can see in my house and I can see them. So it's that height, 6 foot. And it's more almost like a privacy issue now. So now I'm gonna leave it to you to discuss it with me.
Brian, can I ask you from
Yes.
this point to that point, is that 5 feet?
Yes,
And then that's 1 foot, 6.
correct.
And then there's about 4 inches underneath?
Well, it could be higher than that.
Okay. And this is the 84 inches?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
When the building inspector sent us pictures, he showed a tape measure that was coming to the center part of the fence, not the post.
Right.
They came to 84 and 81, and
Right, I have those on here. I'm not denying that. Go ahead.
so it's,
It's not the post.
his saying it's not the post, it's the fence. When, when we grappled with this, this came up with another property in the middle of the village, where somebody put up a 6-foot fence, but it was on a slightly sloping ground, and so they had gaps on the bottom, and the neighbor didn't like it, and technically they were right. There was a 6-foot limit on the fence. So what the zoning committee did in the last go-around was changed it to 74, so that the gap, 2-inch gap in the bottom, you could have a 2-inch gap at the bottom, and have a 6 foot, they're all standard 6 feet, or 8 feet, or 4 feet, or whatever. You don't get a 84-inch fence usually, unless you construct it yourself.
Right.
So that it would accommodate that gap. And so, nobody anticipated that at the time we did the zoning that you'd be measuring a pole, or the post. You'd be measuring the 6-foot fence, and you have a 2-inch gap at the bottom allowed. And, you know, it's 2 or 3 inches or whatever, I'm not sure that anybody would care. As long as it was close to the ground, not on the ground, but close to the ground and not excessively above the 74 inches that are allowed. You managed, I guess, because the gap is bigger than the ordinary, because of, you wanted a sort of straight fence instead of a arc fence, to get up to 80, 84 inches. So that seems to be the problem. Because up there it's close to the ground, and down here it's probably
Correct.
10 inches or something.
That's because the fence is level.
And that's how it ends up at 84 instead of 74.
Yes.
To me, it's still a 6-foot fence, but I'm not the ZBA. and
No,
I'm not
I
the building
understand, and I mean,
inspector.
if this is such a big issue, the high school would be here with lawyers, and
Yeah.
the neighbor on the right would be, and my neighbor on the left would be, all here raising and hooting and hollering, saying, oh, this is all wrong. Well, in my eyes, it's not wrong, but apparently in the village eyes, it is wrong, so I'm just trying to straighten it out, that's all.
Yeah, not necessarily. It's technically inconsistent with the code, I guess, is the way you say it. But to me, it's a 6-foot fence, and unless it's, you know, there's some manipulation going on to try to make it. It doesn't seem like there's manipulation going on. It's just a matter that the grade changes. And I can understand the desire to have a straight fence rather than one of those that steps down the hill, because those always look a little weird.
My fence, I have the same fence, and we have a sloped yard. So for every section of the fence, if you were to look in my backyard, you'll see that it drops about 2 inches.
Right.
And it does it, when they put it in, they have to do a lot of calculations so that it didn't drop 4 inches on this one and 2 inches on that one and 5 inches on the next one. They basically calculated the full length to contain all of the
Divided by
posts
the numbers, yeah.
to ensure that the drop for each one was consistent for the whole length.
Right.
As our yard slopes
And
down.
that look doesn't bother you.
No, well, it follows the grade.
Right.
It looks good, which is what the code says. The code says per grade.
Mhm.
You know, so, you know, there might be an option to take the lattice off the top. It would still meet the, I don't know, if you take it off, it might even be over the code even with
You
that.
still have the posts, so taking the lattice off, really, all right, fine, I
No,
take it
no,
off.
Yeah, I think as John pointed out, typically when you look at the fence, it's like the panels in the fence, and fences have to have posts between them. And no one's gonna argue if you have a 2-inch thing on the post. It's really the height of the fence. Right. And so 84 inches going to the top of the post is a lot different than 74 inches.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. You know,
So
that,
the two options are to get a variance or to go back to your installer and have them move the panels down 2 inches per section or whatever it turns out to be so that you follow the grade. That seems like the two options, right? And I don't know how difficult that is to retrofit a fence.
I think
Mr.
we
Chair,
go ahead, Brian.
Brian, did you- if the panels can't be modified, can the lattice work be modified?
Well,
Those are all sort of done at wherever they're done, the factory.
yeah.
So to tear them apart would be tough.
Yeah, this fence is all over the village. It's just a 300 series fence, right? We know the size of it. This issue's come up several times before. And I have seen in the past where this board has suggested just bringing the grade up a little bit around it at the bottom. So to your point about mulch and
Right.
soil, I think that 4-inch problem at the bottom seems like it can be solved with a little bit of grading because it is measured from the surrounding grade, right? So whatever point that starts is measured up to the top of the fence and not the post. So
Yeah.
it seems like we can solve 4 inches of it through grading. I know that's disagreeing with Justin, which is probably something I'm not supposed to do, but I know Justin's fairly new to this and this fence is built
I
in
would
the
say
village a
that
lot.
defeats the intent of the code, to
Right.
just shovel stuff in there to make up a difference.
Yeah, I think it would have to be at least permanent
Yeah, I mean, you can
ground
see-
as opposed to mulch, but
Yeah, I'm not
You
suggesting
can
it's
see where the
temporary.
grade is, and the top of the fence should be measured from the grade, not from a berm that somebody shoveled in underneath it to retroactively meet the code. I mean, that's,
Agreed, but I think
all
what
due
we're
respect,
talking about is
that's
a permanent
really
change.
not what the intention was.
No, but I think if we're permanently changing the grade of the backyard here, this isn't about a couple of yards of soil. This is, in this case, a whole planter bed that was clearly intended to be put there, or maybe even grading up onto the slope of the backyard in some manner. You know, a more permanent solution to the grading there.
That would be a lot of fill.
It'd be a
To
good amount of
bring-
fill.
to bring it up to the far end of the thing, and then, you'd have to be concerned about drainage that you introduced. But,
And we have a 10-inch problem, not a 4-inch problem, so it's probably not solving much. But
yeah.
secondly, I don't think your fence installer did you any favors because that fence installer's put this fence in the village many, many times before. And he's
Probably.
well aware of the codes surrounding it. I can tell you that the way this fence is built is the posts are set in the ground, as you know, and the panels are simply just toe screwed in through the posts. So there's really not much to it. There's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 screws per panel, 4 on each side holding the panels
Yeah.
into the post. So it's very easy to drop the sections down. I do appreciate your good design intent to try to keep the top of the fence level. I think everyone agrees that fences don't look as good if they follow the grade to an extreme level, especially a fence like this. Normally, what I've seen done in this situation is once you get to a severe grade change, you simply make a step. So instead of following the grade at a curve, you just drop the fence, one section of it to make a grade change somewhat abruptly. But in your case, it looks like you could make that grade change all the way at the corner which seems like an obvious place to make that grade change. And if you were to drop the panels, maybe add a little soil, and make a grade change at the corner, it does seem like you could avoid potentially needing a variance. And the suggestion that came up earlier, modifying the fence, we all agree is difficult, but I wonder if in that scenario, you couldn't just remove the SQL topper in those two sections so that you kept it reasonably the same height, but you just lose the topper in one section, so.
Sorry,
So-
Karen, what's an SQL? Did you
It's
say
just the
SQL?
style of topper, so this is a fence topper,
Oh,
and this just
they're-
happens to be
the
an
lattice
SQL.
work?
Yeah, the lattice work
Oh,
is,
yeah,
the topper. So if you
I'm
were to
getting
drop all
close.
these panels down,
Yeah.
cut off the posts, you know, because it would probably look somewhat ridiculous if you didn't cut off the posts, but it seems like something on your fence installer to do that. Put the caps back on, and then at this point, perhaps, just eliminate the topper from these two sections, maybe even bring these posts, these panels up, and you can maintain that look of a level fence, or maybe just do a modified topper for those two panels, so that you can have that level look, but you do deal with the grade change below instead of at the top.
Yes.
Cutting away rather
So
than
that
raising.
sounds like a lot of work to me.
So to avoid a variance.
Sounds like a
those
lot
seem
of work
the
to me
two
too.
So based on what planning board member Darren said, because the zoning board of appeals is not gonna meet until the middle of March.
That's fine with me, the fence isn't going anyplace.
Okay, so because they're not meeting to the middle of March, do you want to go back and find out what it would take to do what Darren suggested? Because if what Darren suggested is possible and you can bring the fence into compliance, you don't have to come back. You don't have to get a positive recommendation from this board, and you don't have to get a variance from the zoning board of appeals.
And I might add that that shifts the burden to your fence installer, who I do feel has some accountability in this for not standing up for what the code is.
Because they don't have to do the positive recommendation tonight. You can come back, they can table it, and you can come back on February 21st, because that'll still give plenty enough time, because the zoning board of appeals doesn't meet until the middle of March.
Or we can do a recommendation at this point, and, you know, if you want to continue the process, it's sort of, to me, it's whether you can get the installer to do something that you can live with, or you can pay for a shot at the zoning board of appeals, which, I don't know. Because I think there's a decent argument that you would, you know, they have to, it's an area variance, not a use variance.
Right.
It's essentially balancing the benefits or adverse impacts on the community versus the exception that you want. So if it doesn't seem to affect the community, they can give you a variance. But that's their choice, we don't know how they'll do it.
Right.
They might be sticklers about it, or they might be forgiving. We can't tell.
We just don't know.
Yeah, I think what Ryan said was helpful. If you can work with your contractor and propose to the ZBA a solution that would bring it into compliance, then it would be a done deal.
Mm-hmm.
Boy,
But you gotta, it's a lot to make up though.
He wouldn't even have to go to the ZBA.
Yeah.
If his installer
Yeah,
can do
oh,
that,
right,
he
and-
wouldn't
and-
even have to go to the ZBA.
Okay, and the ZEO goes and takes a look and says, this is in compliance, we're done.
Well, I can't give you an answer. I have to talk it over with my wife. She's gonna make the ultimate decision. And she might just put a middle finger up to you too. I don't really know. I can't talk for her, so, all right?
All
But
right, have you talked to your installer to see if they have a remedy?
what's that?
Have you talked to your installer to see if they
No.
have a remedy and what it might cost you or them?
He doesn't even know I need a remedy.
Oh, all
Right?
right.
If he knew I needed a remedy, he wouldn't have put it up that way.
Well, I mean, after the fact, you found out that it needs a remedy. So you could go back to him, he could come up with a proposal to how to fix it and how much it might cost, and that might help you in the zoning board of appeals. If you said, this is gonna cost me or cost the installer, you know, $2,000 or whatever it is.
Right. I'm sure that's gonna cost more than $2,000.
Well, I don't know.
I have a contractor right here, he can probably give you a ballpark real quickly.
But at any rate, that would be helpful in the ZBA to say, why should I, it's not affecting the community character. My neighbors, you could get your neighbors to write a letter saying, doesn't bother them in the least.
I only talked to one of my neighbors. I'll let you figure out which one that is.
Well, I don't know anything about neighbors, but the point being, you could try a ZBA variance, I think you'd have a decent shot.
Right, all right.
But,
how much is that
I
gonna
would say,
cost?
from my opinion, this is nice, it looks good, it does its job as a privacy fence for the back of his house. As somebody who used to coach, in full disclosure, I coached his daughter on that field, and being back there with all its activity and noise, 25 years ago, I thought, geez, I don't think I'd want to live right next to a high school field with all the games in there. And also, what Brian said with having to pick up stuff, I do the same thing with my neighbor. I'm over there half dozen times a year taking care of his property because I take pride in it. And to me, my common sense understanding of the law would be, there's nothing wrong with that. And I would vote for a variance for that, but I'm only one of 5.
you just make a recommendation, so you gotta convince the ZBA. To me, it doesn't bother me, because the intent was there, it's a 6-foot fence. The installer did the easy way out, rather than technically the correct way out.
And that's where I'm having trouble, that's where I'd have trouble voting positively for a recommendation to the ZBA,
Well,
because,
maybe you should withdraw yourself.
well, no, I want to explain, because I think it seems like your intentions were good, but in a sense, what we're doing is just saying that, well, someone had good intentions, and then their contractor did something knowingly, right? The contractor knows the code in the village, we have to assume he knew the height limitations, and you ended up with it. So your good intentions, no one who should know better stepped in and said, wait a minute, sign this, or you might be in for a problem if I do it this way. I need you to know that that would be on you if it causes a problem with the village. No one appears to have said that to you. So by recommending a variance or having a variance issued, we're helping you out of your problem, and that's a good thing in my mind. But it's also setting a precedent that, well, someone with good intentions who ends up with a problem can just go get a variance and get it fixed, and that contractor is not sort of indirectly or directly held accountable and can then just repeat this type of behavior. And it could happen in lots of different forms around the village. So that's where I'm personally struggling, and hoping that we can get even to a more reasonable situation to ask for a variance for, because I understand your good intention, I'm not trying to punish you, but I do think you're in a tough spot, and by extension, because of that contract, by extension.
So,
Oh, no, sorry. Board the TV.
do you want to weigh in on
I,
a straw poll of
yeah,
recommendation?
I kind of agree with Darren that you're saying that the contractor, who's a professional and experienced and done a lot of these things, didn't come to you and say, if I do that, it will be in violation.
He certainly didn't come to me because I was working.
Or your wife,
Right. all
the
right.
boss.
But you think, yeah, she might be the boss, but
Okay.
you think she knows how to pick a hammer up?
Okay, no, but I'm just asking, you contracted with the contractor to
Sure.
do this, right? You knew when you got the building permit what the code was, right? You hired a contractor. The contractor was a professional, experienced contractor who should have known better. And you're saying that he said nothing to you or your wife that, this could be a problem, especially with the grade there. And I agree also, it's an issue that I don't want to set a precedent here, that people, it's unfortunate, and I'm sorry you did it, but it's self-inflicted. I don't want to have more people coming saying, well, I had good intentions, right? It's pretty clear what the code is, and the code is not in compliance. But Ryan's recommendation to you to work with the contractor And if you can come up with a solution that will put that fence in compliance, you're done. You don't have to come back to anyone. It's just the CEO will go and take measurements and you'll be done.
Thank you for the
Or-
compliment, I think that was more Darren.
Okay.
Just following up.
Okay, okay, so Darren, or you can, I think as John points out, you can go to the ZBA and ask them to grant you a variance.
All right, that's it. All right, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Who is it? What are we doing?
Well, if you want, we can vote on a recommendation so that you don't have to come back to us.
That's
before you
fine,
go to
you
the
can
ZBA.
do that. I will contact this person and give him my Marine Corps drill instructor the best I can, so he understands what I'm up against now.
If I might suggest, why don't we vote on the recommendation, but do a neutral vote, not a positive or a negative recommendation, and state our reasons for such, so that the ZBA knows how we feel. That we don't think that, is that reasonable?
What?
Or would you rather just let him go away, and if he wants to continue with the ZBA, he has to come back to us again?
So, well, help me understand here, if it's not a positive or a negative, what is it? Just
You
some
can do a neutral
observations?
recommendation. But it's up to them, it's not, that we
So
have a
for
split
example,
vote,
Yeah,
for
so
instance.
can you propose it or give an example of what it might be? If it's-
I'll put a motion on the floor, if we want to move forward on it. I suggest we do a neutral recommendation, because the board has divided feelings on this. We don't think it's necessarily the applicant's fault, it's a 6-foot fence, it was improperly installed. The installer should have done it right. So the ZBA could give them a variance. Or they could require that the installer, they could not give them a variance and they'd be required to have the installer redo the thing. And that's up to the ZBA. The planning board was split in its feeling about it, which I think is true. We're in support of the positive recommendations. You guys are doubtful.
Right.
And that way, he doesn't have to come to us anymore. It's a small enough issue that I don't see why he should have to come back to us.
Yeah, but I just wouldn't put in the neutral recommendation that it was the installer's fault or that it was not the owner's fault. You know, the owners, the residents people are responsible for meeting the code. And I wouldn't say it's not their fault.
Okay, you can say it
They got a
any way you
building
want.
permit, they knew the code, they hired a competent dealer, and that's it. I just wouldn't put a recommendation or write something that says it's not the occupant's, the applicant's fault.
Could we break it into two pieces and vote to make the recommendation to the ZBA one, and make a second vote whether to vote positively or negative? And to have a positive or negative referral, so
You
that.
don't have to have a positive. All the time, boards do neutral recommendations.
Right, but I was just thinking then there would be on the record that there was sort of a potentially split vote.
Well, that's what I would say.
On the positive or
If we were
negative. You just
divided.
haven't articulated it in the resolution. Okay.
And okay, I'm fine with saying it's not the applicant, it's not his fault, we don't have to say that in the thing. We just had, that he asked for a 6-foot fence, he got a 6-foot fence. It doesn't comply with the code, technically. But it is in a location where the anomaly is not a serious violation of community standards. In the opinion of at least me.
We wouldn't know that unless there was a public hearing and we heard, from people.
Well, I said it, at least according to me.
Yeah, well.
All right, so that's what I'm suggesting. We do a neutral vote so he doesn't have to come back to us. We know the issues. We've weighed in. Let the ZBA decide if he decides to go to the ZBA.
Mr. Chair, if the board is divided, as it seems tonight, because it's only the 4 of you, and normally there's 5 planning board members, that 5th to be the tiebreaker, being that I work closely with the ZBA as well, and knowing how they're going to have a very difficult time understanding what you guys are trying to get across, and because there's going to be more than a month in between tonight and the ZBA meeting, and if there is confusion at their level and they send it back to you, this gentleman has to wait an entire month for it to come back to you if they don't understand your recommendation.
I just think we say in
Could
our
the board
recommendation, we
consider
think it's,
tabling this and seeing if there's going to be a fifth board member at the meeting on the 21st?
I don't support that. I think we don't want to jerk around the applicant here. We've stated our opinions. We can say in the divided recommendation or neutral recommendation that we think it's appropriate for the ZBA to decide, and we don't have a consensus on either way. And we don't have to wait another 2 weeks to find
I mean,
out.
from my recollection, Chair, the last time the planning board was this undecisive and sent something to the ZBA was either the Beekman Arms or some other application. I mean, if usually the ZBA is assisted by this board in your recommendation to continue with their process, if it's presented to them, the board was so split, you know, what is to say they're not going to be as decisive and they're split?
It's up to them to make a decision, not us.
Wouldn't they hold a public hearing?
Yes.
Yes, there would be a public hearing, but right now there's the same, actually it's a worse situation. There are only 4 members, there's a vacant seat. So if there's no alternate and there's the same split, you're almost right. The applicant is almost in the same place. So how long does this
Yeah, but
go on?
I appreciate your point, Ryan, but I think the ZBA is in a better position to decide that kind of thing. I mean, we're empowered to, you know, follow what's in this book, and the ZBA is empowered to deal with things that fall outside of it, special circumstances. And they have their set of tests, which we don't have the ability to apply to a situation like this. So I think if it makes it there, I appreciate what you're saying. Even with our commentary, you know, they have a set of criteria they use to make decisions that I would hope would be the thing that would steer them through.
Sure. I just know the ZBA chair very well, and this is going to be an interesting one for them to navigate through. So.
All right.
Is this on the Village YouTube?
It will be
Then
before.
I would say, let them watch what we're doing here tonight.
All right, so right now, we have a motion by the acting chair for a neutral recommendation as all the findings that John Clark presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Good luck.
You don't sound positive, but that's all right.
I'm a positive person, but
All right, thank you.
I can't count on the ZBA.
Guys, thanks for working.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is 6460 Montgomery Street. David Pistachio and architect Kevin Conlon. A site plan request for a pool and spa.
Tell me what's best for getting
I think over there.
over here. Don't want to be over there, right? 'Cause-
There's additional
You want to
easels
just
behind
replace
the
the
flag.
table with easel? Jeff, if the table goes and the easel goes here, is that helpful?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as we can see it here. We have everything that you're going to display?
Except for the actual black and white site plan. I don't know if you have that
Is
one.
that it?
You've got it right there.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Okay. Then we can just do it this way.
Well, make sure that the
Yeah,
audience
the
can see
audience and the
it.
camera wants to see it, so maybe just put it here.
What I'm going to give you here right now, this is just this, essentially it's everything you were given digitally, but.
Great.
Thank you. There's two. All right. Again, my name is Kevin Conklin, Conklin Architecture. I am here to represent David Pistachio and Daniel Geller. I believe they were here in the past to discuss this proposed idea of the pool, along with the pavilion, and what we're calling sort of a shading device. For lack of a better term, it's a grotto, but I don't want to call it a grotto because it's not this big grotto waterfall thing. I think the word grotto is sort of very loosely used, and I don't think it applies really here. So what we're proposing to do is add a 18 by 45 foot pool to the rear yard in the northeast corner. There is a 20 by 20 hip roof structure which will be supported by 4 posts. It will have a fireplace inside it. There will be some hardscape around the pool. There will be, all the way in the northeast, the upper right-hand corner of the property is where this sort of shading device goes. Correct. And behind that is a concrete pad with pool equipment, pump, and heater. Beyond that, between the proposed fence and this pool equipment, we're proposing to heavily landscape that corner of the property, berm up the earth a little bit to try to help get some extra height for some decorative landscape grasses and shrubbery to try to raise that up to screen from the neighbor on the other side of the fence any noise that may be generated by the equipment. In addition, we're proposing to put a 6-foot high fence around the property from the, it largely goes from the corner of the existing carriage house, which is at the end of the driveway, heads north along the property, and then heads west towards Montgomery Street, and then turns south and runs back into the side of the existing residence. Along the driveway, there's another fence which we need for a slew of reasons. One of the big reasons is building code requirements. There's a second style of fence. It's correct, and that will go up, and that's more of a requirement for the pool fence. It comes all the way up and back to the deck that's on the rear of the house. I understand one of the requirements from the planning board was to get a good understanding as to what the impact is from Montgomery Street. We've provided imagery. Can you scroll down through the... Can you keep going? Keep going. Actually, there's a separate file that we had sent you the other day. Sorry.
Which would that be, the enlarged perspective pages?
Yes.
Okay.
So these images that we created are, we took the photo from Montgomery Street, we've modeled up the proposed project and sort of created this photo rendering. That is correct. So you'll see it coming off the side of the house heading to the, north, heading to the north to the property line.
To the left of the carriage house, right there.
Yeah, right.
So you can see above the fence, that's proposed fence and landscaping along Montgomery Street side of the fence. Behind it there is what you would actually see of this entire project, which is the top of the pavilion structure, the 20 by 20 pavilion structure.
Isn't there like a 16-foot high chimney coming out of the top of that pavilion?
There is a chimney which comes up out of the, can you go back to the other, the first file you had? That one. So there is a 14, it would be roughly 16 feet to the top of that, and that's also on that image, the photo.
Oh, yeah, well, I was asking because I didn't see that. Oh,
It is
this
there.
thing right here.
It is there, yes.
Right here.
Yes. Yep. So that does exist. It's required to be 2 feet above anything within 10 feet horizontally as a building code requirement. So that does exist, and that will have a stone veneer on it.
All right. That's this this is the chimney right here.
That's correct. It sort of falls in an odd spot in this image because the tree sort of behind it sort of takes away from that. Can you go down to the next? This image is slightly further south, largely at the end of their driveway, showing proposed landscaping along the driveway to help hide anything from Montgomery Street here. All that's going to be visible from the driveway opening of this property will be additional landscaping.
Is this an existing driveway?
This is an existing driveway.
Cobbles, like brick.
Brick.
Does it cross the sidewalk?
Can you go down the?
Oh, here we go.
It's just
No,
an apron,
no.
it's just
Okay.
the brick apron, everything else is blacktop.
Okay.
Keep going down if you wouldn't mind. This is from slightly further south. The neighboring property, looking in through the property, again, you'll make out the roof of the pavilion structure, and there's the chimney again that you can see,
Right here.
with some landscaping that will help screen this from the passerby. And then I believe the last image we have is from, what is it, Pratt Avenue? This is from the parking lot behind the spa. You'll see, assuming that that shed stays there, then you will see
there, right?
the chimney there. Actually, I think it's slightly to the left if you zoom in on that. It's just barely over the top. It's that gray.
Oh,
To the
this-
left, it's that.
right here.
I'm not sure what that other mass is that's there, something in the background. So this is what you would see. So the intent of this structure is to take the architectural characteristics of the house. We've used the dental detail, we've used the columns that are on the front porch, the heavy trim that's the characteristic of this era, of home, and we applied it to this pavilion in the back. And I think what I really wanted to show with these images is, in terms of a visual impact to the village and those on Montgomery Street, I believe the impact is minimal, largely due to the requested 6-foot fence and the landscaping that's going to hide that. In addition, there's also the hedgerow, which is, of course, these photos were taken in the winter, so there's no life to the hedgerow right now that currently runs along the sidewalk along Montgomery Street, but there's a lot of life between the street and what we're proposing in the rear yard.
My concern with this project is its proximity to the nearby house on Platt Avenue. That seems to me to be squeezing in that back corner, which is going to impact the neighbor. And I traced the pool on the bigger thing here, and then I went from an orientation that was basically east and west to north and south, so it was more in the middle. And it pretty much fits.
You're saying if the pool rotated 90 degrees and slid across the yard somewhere else, closer
So
to
it's
the
like,
house.
it'd be in the middle of the yard, it wouldn't be up near the, right up, pretty close to that woman's house. That's my concern. I mean, if I lived in that house,
Is the concern the fact that the pool is back there, or is
Noise.
the noise?
activity,
And the noise from
people in the pool.
people in the pool?
And plus, you got pool equipment, pumps can be loud.
I can't tell you that a pump doesn't make any noise. I think that today's pumps on these pools they generate noise, of course. I think that in the season that the pool's used, there's going to be life on all of the vegetation that's around that. And along with burning up the soil between the property line with the fence and the pool equipment, in that area directly to the left of your cursor, between the pool equipment pad and the property line, there's going to be burned up soil with plantings, again, for the decorative grasses, a slew of landscaping plants that we can plant along that. You know, in the season that anyone's going to be outside and anyone's going to be using the pool, all that's going to have life to help mitigate the sound, in addition to the fence that will be back there.
Your concern, Michael, is this proximity here between this stuff
Yep.
here and this house.
The other thing I'd mention is in terms of why it was placed that way, there's a septic system at the back of the house, and there's a requirement of 35-foot setback from the furthest septic component. And so that pushes the pool back on the property. It's not,
So the
it's
septic
not
is in
ideal.
here?
Septic's in that area, yes. There are 3 septic components in that area. And so while it's not, we pulled it away from the fence significantly since the first pass of the drawings, and we put significant amount of plantings, and you know, we have to put variable speed motors in by code now, so that those are much less noisy.
But you could put them somewhere else.
We could move that pad with the equipment somewhere else. We could, it could slide down
And what is over here, just north of the carriage house?
just,
There's a
Just an
overhang?
Excuse me?
Is that just showing overhang of the roof?
that's just an
It's a brick
existing
pad.
brick patio that's there.
So it could be put over there, on that side of the pool.
I would think we could move the equipment closer to the carriage house to get it out of the corner.
Or it could go to the forward section of the shade.
Behind the chimney?
Yeah, so in front of to the west of the shade.
This area here is
So it
like
could
John
go
was
either
looking
there
at.
or up here.
It could move, I think, to me, I mean, either of those opportunities are there. I think it would make, if we had to right now choose a new spot for that equipment, my reaction would be to maybe put it down by the carriage house. You know, there seems to be, I don't know what's right on the other, I don't think there's much of anything right on the other side of that fence down there. We're further from the neighbor. We could screen that in some fashion, again, so that David and Daniel aren't, it's not in their backyard. We could move that down, yes.
And this
Is a hot tub as a part of the pool.
This is, sorry again?
That's a hot tub it's a part of the pool, but it's a hot tub structure within the pool
This structure here, which is labeled
as a shading device.
as a shading structure,
Yes.
6'3" high.
So it's a low roof. You can get underneath that and be in the pool with their seats underneath that built into the pool.
That was, in the earlier proposal, that was like a deck with
And a
a
deck with a water slide,
steps
I
and a
think.
giant-
Downstairs, the deck and a slide, which we removed because of the
So,
concerns.
what is this made of? You're not,
That is also, that is the walls that are above grade of that would be seen would have a stone veneer similar to that's going to be onto the chimney. The roof of that is a flat roof, which below that, it's trimmed out very much like the pavilion. It's got the same characteristics, architectural characteristics that we took off the house to put onto the pavilion, and we carried that through to the building, to the
So-
shading structure.
there's no detail here, or elevation, so you're saying, what, 2 of these sides are stone walls that match the stone of the fireplace?
If you go into the, scroll down, I believe it's in this one. Keep going, keep going. Yes, keep going. There, keep going, okay, so, let's see here, what else on the screen? So you'll see, so this is, can you zoom out? So that's, this image here that you're looking at the top is if your back was to the proposed fence and you're looking south towards the carriage house. So what you're looking at on the left side is this shading structure with that minus any landscaping around it.
And it has a stone wall on 2 sides?
2 sides, it's open on the other 2
So
sides of the pool.
that would actually help shield
Noise.
noise from
Yeah.
the pool.
Correct.
What's holding it
More
up?
so than the
What's
plants.
holding it up in the third corner?
There's a column that's in the pool that. will
The
hold this
column
up.
goes into the pool.
Correct. So you can actually see it down on the lower image below this.
Yeah,
So that's the hot tub you see sticking up.
right here.
That's correct. And if you go to the right, that's looking into it. So there's a column that comes up out of the pool and holds up this roof structure, which is, you'd be inside the pool, sitting in the shade.
Yeah.
There's that square in the back corner is an opening which is largely recommended by the pool designer to allow some air to move through there so it doesn't turn into this rainforest of humidity and uncomfortable air. You can see on the right side of
You're
that.
saying this will be like a water, an underwater seating area?
It would be, if you were sitting in the pool, there's a bench built into the side of the pool that you could sit in and be up to your chest in the water, and then the roof is over your head. So you'd be sitting within that, in the pool. That's part of the pool. You could swim into that space.
And it will be lit?
There will be recessed lighting up inside the roof of that, so any lighting that's generated inside that will stay within that.
John, would this structure and the pavilion be considered accessory structures on the property?
That's a question that hasn't come up. According to the code, you can have up to 3 accessory structures on a property. So you got the carriage house, the swimming pool counts as a structure. And certainly, I guess the pavilion
I think,
would count.
certainly does, sure.
And then there's this shading structure, but it is part of the pool. And my interpretation, but I don't get the final call, is that this is, would be considered part of the pool.
As much as the hot tub.
Yeah, as much as the hot tub. So, you meet the limit of the 3 accessory structures by my count, but,
So the carriage house would be one, the pool would be another, and the pavilion would be a third.
Correct.
Carriage house is 847 square feet. The pool is,
920.
There's a table in the bottom corner of their plan that does this for us. I think if you're headed in the calculation direction, their site plan.
the bottom corner of this.
No, the first, go back up to the very
First sheet,
first
bottom
sheet.
left-hand corner.
Further up?
All the way to the top.
To the top.
All the way. There.
Okay. Carriage house is 847. Pavilion's 21 by 21.
That's the roof. The dimension on that's the roof. It's 20 by, the footprint of the pavilion is 20 by 20.
So what about the second shade?
The pool is 920.
Correct.
I thought you said it was 18 by 45. And then what? I guess including the,
Oh, there's the step area here, I'm sorry. Another 7 by 11. 6 by 9, actually. We're adding into these numbers the coping stone. Let's see here.
has Justin looked at this to check code compliance?
He hasn't yet because this is the first time they're
Right.
coming back since their revision.
Justin has looked at the first one. And
So Justin did look at the first one, but you completely changed your entire proposal.
We're headed for public hearing, so we're doing
Yes.
completeness mainly tonight. Is that correct? We're headed for public hearing, so tonight's mainly completeness.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, I think Justin might want to weigh in on any questionable rulings
okay.
before the public hearing.
And he would do the calculations, because
He would check the calculation.
Yeah, so there's 3, as you're pointing out, there's 3 accessory structures, the carriage house, the pool, and the pavilion, all add up to 2,167 square feet. And their code calculation, I guess Justin would do, would be it can't exceed a percentage of the primary dwelling.
75%.
75%.
Is that of the footprint of the whole building? That's the question.
That's 75% of the primary dwelling, so well, that's the interpretation of the code.
Right. That's what I'm looking at. It's 70% of the principal structure, doesn't say the principal structure's footprint.
Yeah.
What are the percentage of the plot?
So usually how it's measured by the assessor is the first floor.
The footprint.
Yeah,
It says
for
the-
footprint of the first
Yeah.
floor.
The existing main house building footprint is 1490, it says.
Right. It would be hard for almost any swimming pool to not be more than 75% of a
If we're
house.
proposing a
If it
swimming
was a
pool
footprint.
that's, I think this is the first one we've ever had that's over 900 square feet.
What about the one that's next, isn't there a pool on either side of us? There's a pool to the
Yeah,
south.
those were all 600 square feet. This is 300 square feet over anything that's ever been proposed.
Yeah, but like that house on Chestnut Street. we
That
just
was
approved.
6.
The
that
house was much
6,
smaller than this.
Yeah, but they didn't have a pavilion, all they had was a very small garage.
Yeah, I guess it's the carriage house that throws
Carriage
things off too.
house you have a 2-car carriage house that's
Yeah.
pretty sizable.
At any rate, I think Justin should look at the numbers.
Sure.
Yeah.
and come up with a ruling on whether this meets the code or not.
And also the materials list is stone veneer, approvable, is permitted in the historic district.
Yeah, that's the other thing. You're talking about synthetic stone or real stone?
You tell me. Right now, man-made, but if that comes to,
Well, in the historic district, this is in the historic district, there's materials prohibited. So it says recommended facade materials, which I don't, I guess I'm not sure the chimney's a facade or not, include wood, brick, stone, stucco, solid PVC, fiber cement siding and trim, vinyl or aluminum siding, sheet trim, shutters, and awnings, and artificial stone or brick, exposed concrete blocks, there's concrete walls, plywood, or other prefabricated panels and painted lumber shall be prohibited. So I think the artificial stone is going to be a problem.
okay.
That's how I read it.
Right. And then,
They
Unless,
do sliced real stone.
Yeah.
A thin-
It's also in the residential SSO, so that just further elaborates that it should be in context with the surroundings, but.
The material shown on the flat roof of the shading area says 1x4 roof decking.
it's, excuse me, it's decorative, it's a wooden, it'll be a wooden, I don't want to call it platform because everyone all of a sudden thinks that it's a roof deck, but the alternative for a flat roof is to have a rubber EPDM roof
Yeah.
surface, which no one wants to look at. So what it is, it's basically slats that are going to be installed on sleepers on the roof to allow the roof to have a minimal pitch so water run off it, but it'll be anyone walking by it, if you're up in the second floor of their house or any surrounding house, it'll look like just wooden slats. There's no access to the top
So,
of
let's
this.
see, okay, so if you get a heavy rain, it's just gonna drip through the slats into the pool.
There's a rubber roof below that,
Oh.
which will run off the one side of it.
Well,
Roof is not
but
exactly
this wouldn't,
flat, it's slightly sloped.
this wouldn't be used as a deck.
No, that's
This-
correct.
This won't be something people will
There's
go
no
on.
access to the top of this, it's purely an
No, there's no
aesthetic.
access now, and there was in the earlier plan.
Okay.
Which was a concern that it was a party deck right next to the next, 20 feet from the house, next door. But,
We heard that concern loud and clear
yeah,
and took it all out.
No, I think you guys, there was a lot of detail in the prior submission, but this really helps package it up and make it for presentation purposes so we can see a lot more of these details and how they actually impact the neighbors. There was a couple of other things that I just want to make sure you come prepared for at the public hearing that were brought up. I think you've nailed the landscape plan, you've got enough that we can tell what's going on there. You've got the setbacks, the compliance table. One of the things that came up was drainage, largely because you're dealing with a fairly flat site and you're dealing with a fairly large area of the back of this site. So just thinking through how the water is going to function once you build this project, right? We're taking a lot of area that's permeable today and making it impermeable. And we know with pools, there's a situation where you have to direct water away from them, never at them. So there's just a good amount of area that's no longer usable for drainage. And I would add to that just impacts on surrounding properties drainage-wise. So we're talking about doing some berming and things like that. But the question then follows, like, once it crosses the property line, you know, what is that berm doing, right? Are we creating a situation for a neighboring property? Are we creating a runoff situation for the neighbors through this berming that we need to be thinking about? And related to that, the berming and the fence in relation to one another, you know, we're talking, we heard from the prior application, we have a certain height limitation on the fences, but we're talking about building a berm very close to the fence, which is specified as either wood or a synthetic wood. And in either situation, it seems like a good portion of that fence might be buried or in contact with the soil.
If you look at the image that's on the screen right here, we very crudely made a berm. In the software, it's sometimes tricky to make curved objects, but that's sort of so it's within our fence. I think what would need
Drainage would
to,
hit that.
I think between the fence and that berm, we wind up actually with some sort of I'm going to very carefully use the word swale because it sounds like we're creating a river, but I think we would create some containment area to control that surface area of water that could or would come off of that berm that we're proposing, so that it doesn't go to the neighbor's property.
Yeah, and I appreciate the intent of the berm, just in function, sometimes they're a little difficult. You get water running off, soil running off, but also plants have sometimes a difficult time growing in them, so there's also that.
And this was a conversation that David and Daniel and I had about do we berm this up to try to do a bigger attempt to mitigate any of the noise that may come off of I think honestly to me, the equipment I think is always the bigger concern. Sherwin, this had a slide and it looked a lot like, you know, this was the party spot in the backyard here, and that's been removed from this scope. So I don't know that, my opinion is that the berm and the landscaping is really, I think, there more to provide noise mitigation to the equipment, which could be back there for the heat and for the pump. You know, I don't think the noise that's going to be generated in this pool is any different than someone having a barbecue in their backyard with friends. You know, this isn't, in my opinion, again, you know, I realize you need to look out for the village and the neighbors, but.
This dashed outline here, this L-shaped is the berm.
Is the proposed berm, correct?
Right, and
However, if we wind up moving the equipment, we may not need the berm, which then would remove the need for the drainage.
Yeah. Or you might even consider putting the equipment in a building, right? You know, nowadays pool equipment can be put indoors, so maybe there's some sort of extension or readjustment of the interior configuration of that grotto that would allow some of the equipment to live inside the
Right,
structure.
maybe it needs to be an extension because we can't have another. We can't go to 4, right? That would turn into the 4th structure.
No,
But if you put it over by the carriage house, you
Right,
could
we
put
do
a
it-
little privacy fence
Sure.
around the back of it, and that would alleviate the need for the whole
Sure.
berm issue.
So that's certainly a conversation we can have with the pool company to see what recommendations they have for ventilation that would be needed from this equipment. Sure.
Yeah, and I think that does warrant discussion with them, because at this location, which, you know, is a good suggestion, is pushing that 30-foot rule from the pool. You know, pool companies tend to like their equipment within 30 feet
They
just
want
because of the head pressure that's
Yeah.
required to get to the water of the pool. So that's why I just brought up an alternative of maybe considering putting it in some extended form of the structure, or losing some real estate in a structure to accommodate it.
The other question would be, does it have to be within the setbacks of the property, right? So there's a 10-foot setback on the back.
The
Does
equipment.
need to be beyond the 10-foot? And if so, it'd be in the middle of that carriage house side.
Okay.
Yeah, I would think, yes, it has to be
Yeah.
within the
Yeah.
setbacks.
Yeah.
but you've already kind of implied, you get the point about the noise.
Sure.
And it says here, natural cedar or Grand Illusions vinyl wood
Yeah.
vine fence.
We looked at the vinyl, and we looked at the cedar. The vinyl has a wood grain vinyl fence. It looks like wood, doesn't look like vinyl, but I think we're leaning more towards the cedar from a cost standpoint as well as a look.
I think cedar holds up better than vinyl fences in this freeze and thaw sort of environment, but
Yeah,
Well, I
they're,
think
they're
the other
getting a
is-
lot better, but I would say if you're really thinking that, we should probably see a sample of
Yeah.
it, just
Yeah.
like that the board really
I think
understands.
that's in the packet.
I think in real life sample,
Oh, okay,
though,
okay,
it's,
yeah.
it's the gloss versus
We
matte
sent-
aspect of
Yeah,
it.
we sent for samples to see what it actually looks like in person, because we haven't seen it in person either.
Yeah.
But I'm not opposed to the cedar fence, and I'm thinking, given the conversation that just happened prior to us, that we may have an easier time with the cedar fence, because the cedar fence is, it would have to go around the property, which has grade to it, and it might be easier to adjust that than the vinyl fence.
And
Yeah, I
you
think-
understand what a 6-foot fence is.
I understand exactly what the cedar fence is.
And then just some other things related. It would be nice to see the septic and the components on the plan, because I did point out there are several different setback requirements. The most restrictive is the 35 feet from any component, but there are some 20-foot requirements and things to other components of the septic. So just knowing exactly where those are on the plan. And then also something that came up last time is just, what is the strategy for construction here? You know, I know there's a pool builder involved. You know, we've got obviously some carpentry, lots of excavation for various reasons, and a lot of soil going to move around the site, with a septic system occupying a good portion of what is currently open space and a driveway occupying the rest. So, you know, just like to understand a little bit about the strategy, that people have thought that through.
When you say strategy, though, excuse me, are you wondering about the logistics of this, or what do you?
I'm worried about the impacts to neighboring parcels during construction, and just sort of the logistics of on the site. You know, are we gonna have to compromise the septic in some manner by stockpiling material on the top of it? You know, just looking out for the components that are there today, so we don't end up with an issue where we have a failed septic and, you know, other changes that need to be made to accommodate a replacement system and an expansion area.
Sure. In my experience with this pool company and with these sort of custom pools, you know, I mean, this site sort of lends itself nice to the fact that they can get a dump truck right in next to almost, I mean, within reach of an excavator to dig the hole, to prevent needing to stockpile it on the site, or to prevent needing to have trucks running around and destroying this existing septic that's there. Sure, there's some other logistics in terms of the excavations for the pavilion structure, and a much more minimal sense though, as there's 4 footings and something for the chimney that needs to be supported, but understood. So how would
Walking
you?
us through that work plan, I think would do it.
Okay.
If that is in fact the
Sure.
work plan.
Okay.
Because the last thing we want is to start construction and there be just a giant mound of soil, you know, spilling over onto neighboring
Right.
properties, or during a storm event starting to run down the driveway onto Route 9, that type of thing. So
Okay.
a dump truck's a great option if that is the plan.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously, and I don't know if this is the conversation for now or for later, I mean, the construction of any, these custom gunite pools, there's a limited window of inconvenience that comes because of the equipment that needs to be brought in to shoot the pool, to do that. But that's a one-day event in my experience. We would hope that that's manageable for the neighbors, for the board, for anyone, that, you know, there's a minimal impact of the excavation in terms of the time, the duration of this. You know, it's a day to get the hole dug, and then there's a day when they show up to shoot the gunite into the pool. And then after that, it's largely, you know, carpentry, which nail guns, that sort of stuff that happens with any project, but,
Yeah, and I'm sure that's all, it worked out, easy to
Okay.
present.
Okay.
And then, just a note for the plan, and I didn't see it on here anywhere, is just something to state that everything being done with relation to the pool will comply with New York State.
Absolutely.
Building
Building
code
code,
in
yeah,
terms
the
of
pool, the swimming pool code.
Sure, swimming pool code. Just not something that we typically look at in great detail, but there's quite a bit in that code. So just you affirmatively stating that you agree to comply with that code, I think takes it away from
Sure.
us in terms of our responsibility
Sure.
with it.
Is
And
there
then-
bathrooms in the carriage house? So there's no bathrooms within this, so if anybody's gotta use the bathroom, they have to go into the main house?
Correct.
There's a side entrance to the main house.
Off the deck on the back of the house.
And then just, I'll echo that comment about cultured stone and synthetic materials and just the historic district, the sensitivity overlay, just the adjacent properties, the Route 9, although well screened from Route 9. I think there's just a timestamp that goes with some of the more synthetic and cultured materials that doesn't quite feel like it jives with the style of the house and the neighboring properties in the village. And then further than that, just some of the techniques that typically go with cultured materials and synthetic materials, they look a little less authentic than a cut stone that's applied in the same.
Agreed.
I've used some cut stone before in the house I built, my last house that I built, it looked just like green stone.
Yeah, the joints just look much more authentic, and the stones themselves have just some undulations that you don't get otherwise. So just to echo that feeling. Big improvement. Thank you for taking the amenities away, some of the slides and other.
Yeah. One option, I'm just gonna throw it out, I don't want to try to design your project, but you could move the shade structure to the south side of the pool corner and put the pool equipment behind it, between there and the carriage house. And that way you wouldn't have the,
The south side,
If you're to mirror it on the pool, the downside of that is then, there's probably a slew of downsides to that, but the first downside I just thought of was the conversation I think we had a minute ago about the fact that there's these two walls that'll help contain some of the noise, and we're just
Right.
opening that back up too.
yeah.
But, yes,
No, you had the question about the pool, equipment being too far from the pool, you could put
Oh,
it behind
yes,
that
yes,
building, and
yes,
that way it
yeah.
would be sort of
sure,
incorporated into the pool deck, and wouldn't be considered a separate structure, and we'd be sort of hidden away, but not next to the carriage house.
sure.
But
yeah, I think that's solvable, if we can figure that out.
shade structure might work better on the south side of the pool. But it depends. So, are we ready to, there's still these two lingering questions about code compliance. The 3 accessory structures and the 75% of the principal structure.
Yep,
And
and
I'd
probably
like-
we should also have
and
them
if-
check the 30% lot coverage, double check that.
Right. So why don't we schedule a public hearing, and hopefully Justin can come to some determination on those in the next 2 weeks, or do you think that's too ambitious?
I would prefer March 7th.
Is that okay with you?
Is that
I
okay?
think, do we need to mail out, do we need to do
No, we
that?
take care of that.
Okay, I didn't know if there was a time frame for that. and I didn't know
There
if we
is
could
a
do it
time
by-
requirement for that. We handle all the mailings to the neighbors. It's just that the 21st, we already have a public hearing scheduled. So I was just suggesting March 7th, because that gives plenty of time
That's fine.
for you guys
Sure.
to
Yeah,
do
that's
any
fine for us.
Yeah, yeah.
stuff
Resolve.
and allows the code enforcement officer to do his thing.
Love it.
Okay.
Any other lingering questions?
So, leaving here tonight, we should take the strong recommendation from the board about moving the pool equipment. That's how I take it, at least. There's the materials, the stone materials, it's indicating the septic constraints on the property, drainage, and then having some dialogue about the methods of this project happening within the backyard.
Yeah,
Okay. Great.
cedar fence is safe.
What's that?
Cedar fence is a safe choice,
Okay, we'll update that.
non-controversial, as long as it doesn't exceed the 74
We won't go above.
inches.
When I saw the price of the vinyl fence, it became much more attractive.
So I just need a motion,
So we have a motion to set the public hearing for
March 7th.
March 7th.
I'll make that motion, Jeff.
I'll second that, Mike.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, really detailed and good to follow.
We'll be back with some newer stuff for the public hearing.
Okay, that's the end of the listed items on the agenda. We have some discussion issues. The first one is a letter from the owner at 86 East Market Street pertaining to window replacement.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Dear Chair, Planning Board Chair, and members of the Planning Board, we are doing renovations at 86 East Market Street in the Village of Rhinebeck that will include replacing windows. Our window supplier at Hobson Window, Inc. is sensitive to the considerations of the historic character of the village. He has recommended Anderson Woodwright 400 series double hung windows with white clad exterior 6/6 SDL grills as a replacement that is quote unquote like in kind to the originals. He has provided an example of a previous project at 37 Livingston Street in Rhinebeck as an example of the finished appearance. Please let us know if any other information is required and if the board feels this is subject to site plan review.
First of all, it is subject to site plan review, don't you think? We've done this in the past on replacement windows.
And this is the Four Sisters over here, it's the one next to Vicky Hack.
So I provided the board, hopefully you're able to review the photos and the letter from when it was originally submitted in 1979 with SHPO, the Historic Building Structure form.
Yeah. I went by and looked at it today, and, you know, I understand the need for energy efficiency, but these buildings, these windows that face the street are old windows.
Yeah.
Original wavy glass.
Yeah, they got them, you can see it from the street.
Yes.
And I hate to lose that, and I remember and it's a different project and a different process, but we required the old windows to be retained up the street on East Market Street for that new building. That was a demolition permit, we had more leverage, I think. And we have approved replacement windows in the past,
Multiple photos.
as long as they had exterior muntins and they had the appearance of the same profile and that sort of thing. So, they do have, and they're not entirely, it looked like some of the windows had it and some didn't on the front. They had custom-built storm windows
Storm sashes, yeah.
that fit right in the recess, which to me is as good as the double pane windows that they put in. Now, they don't work as good,
Yeah.
and I don't know how good these work. They look like they're poorly maintained, and a lot of the caulking material is falling out and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
which is happening on my house too. Every summer I say I'm gonna go out and fix them. But, I think in response to a letter, I thought they might be here to discuss.
Yes.
They weren't sure, so they just felt at this time a letter, they're more than willing to show up if this
Okay.
decision, as you guys have made it, so they will be here on the 21st.
Right, so I'll just say my opinion. I would urge them to keep the front windows
Yeah.
and use the exterior sashes, storm windows. The side storm windows are ugly, they're aluminum, they're poorly profiled, they stick out. They probably don't seal as well, because they're double pane, they have a joint in the middle.
Right.
So I can see replacing all the back windows. People wouldn't be able to see the glass, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But But I would suggest, and I don't think we have anything in the code would allow us to require this. Although I guess you could interpret that one statement. It says, whenever possible, structures listed as contributing buildings and defined in whatever shall be retained and their exterior historic features shall not be significantly altered. So we have a little leverage that we can at least urge them to keep the front windows as is and just repair the existing sashes if they have them, the storm windows. And then allow them to do replications on the sides and the rear. And I looked at the 37 South Street and it looked like they were decent windows.
Yeah, and I can offer a couple things about
Right.
the Anderson Woodwright window. So they're a decent replacement window. They're proposing simulated divided light, which with other manufacturers means you're getting an interior spacer bar and fixed grills on the inside and outside. Anderson's a little different. We would want a full divided light. Because
Goes through the glass?
no, in Anderson terminology, that means it has a spacer bar between the two planes of glass. So you'll have two panes of glass and a spacer bar, and then a grill and a grill.
Okay.
In other manufacturers, Marvin and such, that's a simulated divided light, but in Anderson, it's a full divided light.
Okay,
and
that's
an
the
FDL.
terminology.
So it's sort of like brand-specific terminology, but we would want the FDL at a minimum, even on the sides,
Yeah.
because then we get the spacer bar. The exterior cladding on these is Fibrex, which is part sawdust, part PVC. It's a durable material. It looks like wood.
It's painted.
It comes factory finished, so you
Right.
void your warranty if you paint it. So they're gonna be stuck with one of the 12 stock colors, in their case white, which seems fine for this
Yeah.
house. They can match the trim.
And
to
that
it.
lasts forever? You don't have to paint them?
If you paint them, you're gonna void the warranty because of the PVC content, so they're worried about like UV and warping and things like that. So Anderson's just gonna void the warranty, but
They're wood
it
on
should
the
last
inside,
for,
right?
15, 20 years without having to be painted.
And they're wood on the inside.
They're wood on the inside,
Right.
yeah, that's the Woodwright aspect of it. What else can I tell you? I mean, the profile's a little clunky, but, you start to get to much higher price points if you start to get more petite mullions and things like that. So I think you saw the 37, I guess it was Livingston Street.
They look a little thicker.
It looks a little thicker, but, it's not so much that it's worth hundreds of dollars a window, I think, to get
Yeah.
much more petite. And then the other thing that is good to know about the 400 series is they're like a Marvin, they're infinitely customizable. So we would want to make sure that they're talking about a replacement window, not a new construction window. And in that case, they could measure the opening very precisely and it would fill the entire opening. At 37, it looked a little to me like some of those windows had been padded, like they went with a stock size and they brought in the trim a little bit. There's some funky proportions going on there. So it does seem like they lost a little historic character by going to today's stock size window. That might just be my eye tricking me, but I think the good news about the 400 series is they can go within, an eighth of an inch to any dimension, length or width. So that's somewhat comforting that we're not gonna get this like beefed out window trim that looks like it was made to accommodate a stock window size. And then, I agree on the front windows. I have a tough time deciding whether I like the look of a storm window or I like the look of a replacement window that you don't have the storm in front of and which is the more attractive aesthetic. And I continue to be torn on this issue. So I don't know that I feel strongly either way, but I understand your point about there's such beautiful windows inside. I mean, I can offer, they're thinking they're thinking Anderson as a starting point here, so it does seem like maybe budget is somewhat of a concern, and a repair of some of those windows is probably in the neighborhood of $1,500 a piece. And the replacement windows they're talking about is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $700, $800 a piece for a window that size in an Anderson. So there's a little bit of an economic difference to it too, for whatever that's worth. Not to say it's not right to ask for.
I had a hard time telling which ones had the storm zone. I could see on one window there
Yeah.
was. This one they had it, but the center one it wasn't,
Mhm.
probably because
For
the
the
air
air
conditioner was
conditioner.
there or whatever. And I couldn't tell on the ground floors, just because it was a little shaded and not real bright that today.
Yeah, the ground floor is tough to tell.
So, But you can see the wavy glass even in this picture.
Yeah, for sure.
They're really old windows.
They're really old.
I guess this is like 1860s probably or something. I don't remember what the survey
It
said.
said
It'd be a shame to
1867.
lose those.
Yeah. So, is that a decent recommendation that we would prefer to see the front windows
Yeah,
retained with exterior, the existing exterior storm windows? And the Anderson 400 would be okay as long as they had the full
full
divided light?
And they were full divided light,
Yeah.
replacements, not new construction, and custom size to fit the openings. I think those would be the things that would pull it off most authentically.
Okay. In my response letter, I'll include all of that, notifying them. We'll see them on the 21st.
Great.
Yeah, I'm not sure that if he or she wants to insist on full replacements, that we can say no, because we've said yes enough on previous windows.
Yeah.
And the only time I can remember that can you buy wavy glass and have wavy glass put in? Because I remember there was a house on Livingston Street that wanted to take the windows and regular windows and turn them into French doors.
Yeah.
And I said, no, they're never gonna look the same. This is really short setback. You'll be able to see the difference. You know, this was beautiful wavy glass. And I
Right.
said, they make it, I'll put it in.
Yeah,
And they actually look pretty damn good, the
Yeah.
ones he put in.
sure. You can order it. Not all manufacturers will do it. You're probably pushing into a different brand, but they can do it. And some will even take your wavy glass and put it in. The problem with it is it's extremely brittle.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
nobody will
I-
buy it from you because they don't want to hold on to it because it'll break by the time they use it.
Yeah, no, I just didn't know if there was a decent replacement version.
You get into like Boston Sash Company and things like that, so you're starting to go from $700-800 a window to over $2,000 a window,
Well,
maybe into the $3,000 window range.
I
And then
think
you go
myself,
true
unless those are
spotlight.
non-operable, it would be better to keep the ones you got,
Yeah,
and it would save you some money. And,
yeah, it's not the U value of the window that's so bad, it's really just the weight pockets on the sides. You know, that's where all the loss is in terms of
so if you could
insulation.
take off the moldings on the inside
Stuff it, then they wouldn't operate anymore, but, you know, that is an option.
and fill it up, yeah.
Yeah.
Mine doesn't have weights. My old windows don't have weights,
All right.
and they're just like guillotines, you know?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
and
you value it in windows.
every winter I go with, rope caulk and seal them all up,
Yeah,
because that's the only way to really seal them on the inside. I have storm windows, they're not very good,
yeah,
they're not good quality.
yeah. Storms are tough. There's a lot of air loss around them.
But these, I think, are really good ones.
Yeah,
They would seal up really good if you had felt on the inside edge.
sure. Yeah, they fit the frame nicely.
Yeah,
I mean,
and they all have the little brackets and stuff, so that hopefully they still have the storage for at least those 5 windows.
yeah, I mean, no matter what the replacement window is or keeping these, I mean, the screens are gonna go in the spot where the storm goes. So it's gonna be the same application for the screen. So
Yeah.
at different times of the year, it's gonna be somewhat obscured anyway, whether it's storm or screen.
At any rate, I think that would be our suggestion. Anything else to discuss? Oh, we have minutes. We have lots of minutes. And Jeff and Darren did a terrific good job of going through them.
Jeff's the trooper on that. You watched a lot of video to get that.
Yeah, well, they were so long ago, I couldn't remember what happened.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it,
Yeah.
but I'm glad you do.
Let me tell you how I do it. I bring up the video, and you can set the speed of the video
Yeah.
to go faster than normal. And, as long as I hear it, you sound like you're talking really fast, John, but I'm still hearing what you're saying.
I would think you'd have to go slow so you could
No,
make
no,
the
no,
changes.
No,
You just have to stop a lot.
Well, let's look at what we got here.
So yeah, that was a great job,
August
Jeff.
through November.
Yeah, August 8th. Nobody else commented on this?
I have a few, but
Oh, okay.
Okay,
on August 2nd, let's start with
yeah,
that.
okay.
On the bottom of page 4, there's like a typo thing where you repeated 2 words. It's a minor thing. I don't care.
One more. There, on that one.
Where,
At the bottom, right here.
Two-word street.
Fairly visible from the street.
Okay.
And street.
okay.
Take street and out. And street out.
Yeah, I'm not in an editing mode here.
All right.
I don't have the, but let me, bottom page 4, street twice.
And the bottom of page 5 and the top of page 6, you say that the same thing, or I attributed to me, the same thing twice.
Page 5.
So,
Okay, well, here's page 5.
so this little paragraph here, that sentence, and the one down here said the same thing, right? Let's take one of them out.
Oh, I see. So basically, your comment was the same as David's comment.
Now it says Mr. Clark here and Mr. Clark up there, suggested 6/6 double pane.
Yeah. Okay,
Anyway,
page 5, top page 6.
I don't know if we want to get into this. You
Clark.
already did the worst of it.
Yeah, I got it. Clark 6/6. Duplicated. All right, got that. What else?
Anybody else have any comments?
No.
So can we approve that one with as amended?
Okay.
Motion? I'll make the motion, John.
I'll second that, Mike.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
September 6th, I didn't have any problem with that one.
Look good.
Okay. Nothing. Mostly it was, I think Martina confused me with Michael G. on some of these things. Yeah, not much difference here. We're good with this one?
Yeah, so
Okay.
So
a
September
motion to
6th.
approve.
I'll make the motion to approve.
6 as is.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye for September 6th. September 27th,
That was a long meeting.
I have removed the 2 paragraphs at the top of page 8.
Come on, open up here.
They didn't make any sense to me.
Ryan, can we ask Miranda to just put page numbers on these?
Yes, that's something we can,
Okay.
Or even line numbers, if that's even,
we,
so
so,
that's
well,
super
we
helpful.
did do that, I think with just
Farther down.
the amount that she had, working on that, I think it was just a minor look over that she missed page numbers and numbering the lines.
So the top of page 8.
All right, yeah, right here.
No, it must be the next page.
Page 8. Oh, I'm on page 9. Why does it say page 8? Okay. There's page 8, top of page 8.
Top of page 8. Where it says, made a motion to grant positive recommendation. And then the next paragraph was made another, grant a positive recommendation. There's no, is there a second, which would be normal? And then we go back into discussion. It just seems out of character.
That's what happened. So let's see. Because
In
then,
the end, we unanimously agreed to postpone the positive
Yeah.
recommendations. So I would just take
yeah,
those out.
Yeah, because, I know exactly what you're saying, John, because there wasn't a second, and then there was more discussion, and then it was like, well, if we have this much discussion and this many open things, let's
Okay,
postpone.
either take those paragraph out and said the motions did not receive a second, or something like that, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, hold on. Page 8. Motion.
And then also, this is a small thing, Jeff.
Yep.
Planning clerk or planning board clerk for me,
Planning clerk or planning board.
or planning board clerk.
Oh, you're not the village clerk.
I'm not the.
You don't make the big bucks, huh?
Not like the old days.
All right.
So do we have a motion to amend as amended? Approve as amended?
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Second.
Aaron and
Okay.
Mike, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're moving right along here.
Yeah, what else have we got? Okay,
October
now we're-
18th.
Now we're up to, come on, open up.
The only thing I have is on the top of page 10. It says widows instead of windows.
That was probably me.
Yeah. So, 7, where are we here?
10.
10.
There it is, right there at the top. Mr. Clark noted that widows should have solid exterior buttons.
This would be the first.
Yeah, okay, hold on, where are we at? We're in 10, 18. Top page.
Anybody have any other comments?
Nope.
Already.
Widows.
I'll make a motion to approve as amended.
Okay.
I'll second it. Mike, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
One more.
And November 15th.
So we did skip over November 1st, right?
Oh, wait a minute. On that, yeah, I don't know what happened in November.
There just aren't any. I thought I was going crazy, but I think
Okay.
it was. we
I
just-
think she's still working on November
Okay.
1st.
Just wanted to make sure because Darren put some comments in red in this one.
I think it was the 18th that I had the comments.
Yeah, I went back to the 18th because
Okay.
I just remembered that.
They're all in the last matter. I was just, because it was a discussion, I felt like they needed some guidance to come back with, so.
Yeah, so these are your, yeah, oh, I get it, right.
In red.
Yeah, here.
If you just accept
It's
revisions or
windows.
accept all red lines.
Okay,
They'll become
so
part of it.
accept all. Good, all right, so we're happy because we already approved this, so I guess we're good with that. One more is
And then November
November
15th.
15th, yeah.
I didn't have any issues with it. I thought it was good.
Okay.
Yep.
Jeez.
So I'll make a motion to approve November 15th.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I feel like we accomplished something tonight.
We climb mountains tonight.
Good. Okay, what I'll do then is I'll amend with the comments we made. I got notes on all of them, and I'll send them back to you and Martina.
I thought it was very interesting that the property up on the north end is for sale.
Property of the north end.
Yeah.
Oh,
The school and the,
With, you mean where the Co is, where the...
yeah, Primrose
Yeah,
School. and all
Ryan was
that.
saying that guy goes back and forth. He puts it on, and then he puts on separate parcels separately, and then he goes back and tries to sell it as a whole.
This has been an ongoing thing ever since COVID, because I remember being contacted by somebody about the co-property and the school property being listed as separate parcels for sale, and, you know, what is the process, you know, if they were to be sold, or to combine them, or something like that, and, you know, that information was given, and then I never heard from that person again. But this has been,
Interesting. Just something that came up during the review of some of the video footages. I'm going to try to do better at this myself, is just ask some of the people that appeared before us to state their names, because trying to figure out, like, fortunately we know a lot of the people, but there were situations where I could see Miranda wasn't referring to people by their names, or was attributing things to an architect, but it might have been the applicant speaking. So I think it's probably something important to do, and I'll do my best to ask it when people come up. But,
Okay.
just, I had a little difficulty reviewing some of the video, trying to figure that out too.
Good point. Good point, yeah.
Any other issues to discuss? I don't know if people heard about the village board meeting about the historic district.
Tried to go to the first one where Lydia was sick, and then I didn't make it to the second one. Is that the one you're referring to, where
Yes.
she presented?
Her proposal was to completely put together the districts and make the local district consistent with the,
Right, she sent the memo, and she was supporting option 2,
Right.
and then she had the drafts.
and there was a pretty good audience there. And my suggestion was that we not do that, because it makes it really impossible to set the standards for those houses on the end of Platt Street that aren't consistent with the standards. And I went back and looked at the, I guess it was 2020 nomination that was put together for the whole new district.
Okay, expanded.
Right. And he makes a clear distinction in there between pre-World War II and post-World War II architecture. And he says something to the effect that, you know, it's a whole different way of looking at building or something. And so I suggested to the board that they meld the two laws, but they cut off the era of significance at 1945 to account for that. And so all those capes and ranches out there on Platt or the end of Mulberry Street will be on the National Register, and they'll still be able to get tax credits if they want, or they, you know, can put up plaques on their doors or whatever. But they won't be coming to the planning board. And to me, that seemed like a simple solution that would take care of the problem. You would meld the two laws, but you would set the significance date in 45 so that we wouldn't have these sort of design quandaries of how to deal with horizontal band windows compared to mostly vertical windows in the historic district.
Are all the houses on Platt older than 1945?
No, just the sort of western end of Platt, those houses are pre-1945, the big ones on the north side in particular.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And then all the rest of them going up, and the end of Mulberry Street, there's some pre-1930s houses on Mulberry Street, but then it sort of turns into, you know, 1950s and 60s houses.
Got it, so they're all past that.
It just really bugged me that the CVS, the dry cleaner, and the gas station across from South Street would be on the historic district, and we would have to change the design standards to say that these are exemplary buildings somehow.
Yeah.
I just can't see it. And so I made that suggestion. I don't know.
Could you omit properties that under current zoning standards are non-conforming?
Say again.
Could, in the language in the text, for those locations, can you put an asterisk saying properties with an asterisk are omitted based on they are non-conforming under current zoning standards? Because technically, if tomorrow something was to burn down and they couldn't rebuild it in a year, you can't rebuild a gas station there anymore, because you can't build gas stations in Rhinebeck.
Yeah.
The code doesn't permit it. So.
That wouldn't bother me. And let that house behind have a front yard again. It'd be nice.
Yeah, it's a nice house.
But I think that, you know, to me, that, and I said, you know, that will put all the Oak Street buildings on. It'll put the ones on the far west end of Platt Street in the historic district. But it'll exclude those sort of 1960s, 70s, and 80s houses and commercial buildings that, to me, I just can't square up with them being contributing buildings to the historic district and subject to the state standards.
Where did they leave it, the town board, at that meeting?
They would consider all the comments and get back to us.
I think that's a great suggestion, and I think the post the war break. Because CVS, the gas station, and the dry cleaner just make me nuts. To call them contributing, or
The dry cleaners used to be a Sinclair
Yeah.
yeah,
Big
gas station. There used to be a big green dinosaur.
wow,
Right across from the Delmont House.
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
But
And-
originally, it was an old, big old, typical 1900s house.
Yeah. Well, in the comprehensive plan process, the committee I'm working on has identified gaps in the streetscape where infill buildings would be appropriate. And one of those is that dry cleaner building. But if this is put on the, you know, if this is now on the National Register and protected by demolition law, it'd be that much harder to replace that building with something that would complement the Delaware House and all the houses around it. The church, I mean, it's just a terrible spot. for a building that looks like that.
Yeah.
So, in the Neil Larson's actual write-up that made it into the National Register, he says there's 2 distinct phases of development in the village. Pre-World War II, and after World War II, which he calls small, mid-sized century suburban houses, conventional and mass-produced. And yet he wanted to put them on the National Register. It didn't make any sense to me, so.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion. I still like the idea of picking a few special properties.
I suggested
Giving
that.
them
Yeah, I
criteria.
said, if the village wants to go back and in that 1950s, 60s era and pick out some exemplary Cape Cods or ranch houses
Or
or,
groupings that make sense together, because
Yeah.
together they're something. and-
yes, that haven't been butchered or vinyl sided or,
and-
don't have front yard garages and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
and landscaping, we talked about that too, is,
Yeah.
certain parks, certain features, certain rows of trees.
So, we'll see if they didn't take our suggestion the first time we offered something like that.
What
I
about
think
the
she
half
thought
moon
that-
driveways?
What?
The half moon driveways or the half ring driveways?
Yeah, yeah, I'd like to get rid of them, but, that was typical of carriage house drives, so you have to live with it, I guess. But, the last time we had a discussion with Lydia, we suggested that a committee be set up and they go through and pick out which ones
Right.
should be in and shouldn't. And she said that was just too much trouble and would delay the quandary we're in, with conflicting laws, and it would, who knows how soon we'd be able to get that done. So this provides a simple date certain, just like they have 1970 as the cutoff date, we made 1945 the cutoff date. And to me, it eliminates all the problems with the need to create new design standards and the rest of it. Because there was hardly any construction during the war, except for things that were sort of already in process. They were half-built probably, so,
Interesting.
yeah. So we'll see what they do.
When are they gonna,
I don't know. She was,
They'll either announce another workshop or they'll announce possibly a public hearing, if they're ready to start the public hearing.
yeah, I guess that wasn't a public hearing, it
No,
was
that was
just
a
an
workshop.
information session. So they'd have to get the lawyer to revise the law, come up with a draft law, putting them together, and then we'd have to have a public hearing on that. And we'll go through it again if they don't do it right. But Brad on the board, Muniker, before I got up and suggested, had said, why don't we come up with another date? Like 1960 or something, to get rid of the worst of the worst in this new batch. And I said, well, the nomination gives you the answer,
yeah,
what the date should be.
it's consistent with the report.
Yeah.
Worst of the worst. Somebody
In
said,
a way.
lives in one of those.
In a
worst of
way.
the worst.
So we'll see.
Kirk, what did you say was going on with him, Brian?
They're gonna be meeting this Thursday with Ken and Justin
For what?
to go over the garage.
Oh,
Oh, the one in the backyard of that house at the curve?
The front house, yes.
I didn't think it looked that bad.
No, it looks nice, but I don't remember if that's what we approved, and it went up so quick, because he just like put a slab in, and got a
Well,
modular trailer in, and up it went.
yeah, well, if it's just a garage, they don't need to come to us.
I think it's an apartment. Well, we already approved that.
Well, I don't know if we approved the
Yeah, we
building,
did.
did we?
Yeah, we did.
Oh.
But I thought it was on the side of the existing house, and it's kind of
Right
in the
behind, yeah.
back. And I can't say for sure, because I don't have it,
Yeah, and it might not
Minutes
be
just
in
say
it.
east of the house. Behind the house and to the east.
This is pretty much directly behind the house, I think. Sorry,
I'm
that's-
okay with it. It looks fine to me, but, I just think we gotta make sure that
That
what
might-
we approved is what's there.
Yeah, and it might be a home office or something up those stairs rather than an apartment.
Well, he has his office in
His other property.
there's 3-car garage on there.
Right,
His
but,
house.
you know, it might be whoever lives
Yeah.
in that front house might have wanted an office space or a guest room or some other thing that's not an apartment.
We'll get confirmation Thursday. what
Okay.
is
I wouldn't put it past Joe to do whatever he wanted. Anything else?
Ryan, what do you know about, I saw in the mayor's message that they're negotiating with Spectrum for a new contract, and it just brought up a thought about Frontier. And, you know, one of the things when you go around the village, you see is all these like unused telephone wires and redundant poles. And I know there's an agreement or a requirement that Frontier move its gear to the newer pole if Central Hudson puts a superior pole next to an old pole or a broken pole or changes its configuration. And you see over and over all over the village, like, you know, talking
An old
about
pole and a
eyesores.
new pole. next
Old
to
pole
it.
and new
Yeah.
pole, and then you got just wires dangling,
had
just
one right
cut off
in front of our
services
house.
when everybody canceled their
Wires.
phones. Like
Big
South
wires
Street, just,
around.
the whole side of South Street is almost like,
Central Hudson owns.
Central Hudson owns the electric poles, and then they put a lot of new poles in on South Street and cut down the numbers, because they put taller, stronger poles in, so they're less frequent, but.
And they're higher for the
Right in
trees.
front of
Higher
our
for the
house,
trees.
we have two poles separated by about a foot.
Yeah, me too. And I've got, you know, wires in front of my window where if it was higher, it would go right past, and I'm sure most of the houses have that situation. And we just, you know, saw that in the mayor's message, it prompted a thought, like, you know, working with utilities. And it's probably outside of the scope of the planning board, but it is one of those sort of beauty of the village, running through historic district type things. And I just wonder, like, if there's an avenue to pursue. I'm happy to take it up a little bit personally, just to understand that better. But it just seems like there's so much redundancy and unattractive and unused stuff hanging all over the village that could just be eliminated potentially.
Next week, there's a meeting on the Spectrum proposal, right?
Yes, the contract, yes. I don't know 100% the details. You'd have to contact Martina in the village clerk's office.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Spectrum's minor, but Frontier, I mean, the old style POTS lines are incredibly thick compared to what
Right.
Spectrum's running on these poles.
Do they have more, does Frontier still work in the village?
I don't even think so.
Yeah.
I think
thought the
there's
whole
some
point of this-
operation out of the West Chestnut office there. There are representatives out of there. Public relation wise, I don't know.
Yeah.
That
I think the
might-
question was, do they both run wires? I thought the whole purpose is having a contract with one supplier is that you get one set of wires instead of four set of wires through the village.
Well, the other thing is back from 2018 to 2019, Frontier through Castle, well, whoever technically owns Frontier, above Frontier, there's many companies, but somebody ran a bunch of fiber optic wire all throughout the village to supposedly, you know, increase either the DSL or the Wi-Fi connection or whatever the purpose of running back then. And then they were supposed to take down any unused wire. Whether that has fully been completed, I don't know. And on top of that, I don't know, there's new fiber optic being run right now. There's new wire being run right now. I mean, there was guys in a cherry picker out in front of Village Hall just today. Some contractor, so I don't know exactly. I can certainly find out, and try to have some clarification by the next meeting and find out exactly, and I can find out, contact people for you.
Yeah, if anything, I mean, I'm happy to jump into it a little bit, but it just seems like one of those issues is just literally hanging wires that, you know,
Well,
like used to be.
contact somebody on the village board and make your point, because I think during the negotiation of the contract, this is when you would get that.
I think Spectrum and Frontier too, I think you're dealing with communication, you know, I guess it's all communications, but like, there's definitely like old fashioned POTS telephone lines, just plain old telephone service, you know, bundles of it.
Yes.
And just harnesses just hanging.
Yeah, nobody
You know,
has landlines
and you know
anymore.
Spectrum's, that's on Spectrum, because people are watching HBO in their houses at night, and that's still outside their house, so it's like, they're not picking this up anymore.
Right.
And that's what's hanging.
I do have one additional thing. I don't know what the board's feeling is. I know we're missing one. But the new condominium proposal has changed its name to Locust Hill. This is the 80-plus unit just outside the village.
Yep.
I don't know what the board's feeling is. You guys can think about this. If there should be some referral to you guys, or you guys should have the opportunity to comment based on the close proximity it is to the village. And the potential traffic impact, you guys should be a considered agency.
Yeah, we should declare ourselves an interested agency.
Or declaring yourselves an interested agency with the process, and that, I don't believe that Olive Branch has been given to you guys, and possibly because the town board is declared itself lead agency with that, so.
But the village would be an interested party, and
So yeah,
by
so
default, we would be the
either,
one to
yeah, so either the mayor or the trustees can speak for you guys,
So,
or if you guys want to speak as a separate interested agency, you guys have the ability to do so. I think you would need to notify the town board of requesting that status.
So do you want to pass a resolution to have Ryan contact the town board and let us know that we...
I would draft the language and circulate it to you all to review
Okay,
before anything is sent, but
What would that commit us to? An interested
they would just have to
agency?
circulate materials to us.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't require that you get a public hearing or, even a meeting. That would be nice.
Yes,
But at least you would get copies of all the materials. You wouldn't have to go out and seek it.
that'd be great.
So I think we should pass a resolution asking to be an interested agency
Okay,
for the Locust Hill project because of its proximity to the village boundaries.
okay, is that your motion?
Yes,
I'll second that motion. Jeff?
all those in favor?
Aye.
I already wrote a letter to the supervisor about it because I have big concerns. Not with the project, I think it's a great
Uh-huh.
place to put 80 units of affordable housing, but the layout is just awful.
which
And
is
the
surprising
access.
considering Bill Jeffway's, he's a planning board member in a different municipality, but,
Bill Jeffway?
well, not Bill Jeffway, Kernan,
Oh, okay.
Cardi?
Carney.
Corny.
I don't think he's on any planning
I
board.
thought I saw his name on a planning board sheet. Maybe
Can't
it's a
imagine,
different
he's so
spelling.
busy, he's all over the place.
Maybe it's a different spelling,
Yeah, he's got a son named Sean, maybe it's him.
Maybe.
Yeah, but he's actually a good guy. He's all over the place. He's the best developer of affordable housing in the county and probably the state. But he cuts corners. That's how he gets affordable housing. And so you gotta keep on him, and he will do terrible projects or cheap looking, poorly planned. He has an engineer who does his planning, which is not good. And this thing wastes a bunch of land, doesn't have any sort of grouping. It's all sort of strung out along a windy road. It cuts through steep slopes. Involves a lot of retaining walls. It comes out in a very poor place in terms of sight distance
Scary place.
on Route 308 there, or Rhinecliff Road. It's not actually 308. So I wrote a letter with my concerns to the supervisor. So,
kind of naive, but I just would have assumed that anything land use related that came to the village for a referral would somehow end up at the planning board for at least some discussion, rather than the planning board having to hear about it and ask for permission to be at the table. Is that not the case?
I don't want to point any fingers, but I think the agency's involved because it's strictly technically in the town's municipality, even though you have to cross from one municipality to the other in this sense. I think they just, possibly it's an oversight or an overlook referring to us.
and it might be that they haven't, I think they declared themselves lead agency, but they haven't done
Town board,
anything else.
yes.
They're still negotiating with the developer.
But if they're also going to depend upon village
Oh, yeah.
That's
water
fine.
and sewage, are there any requirements for them to be partnering with the village trustees?
Yes.
believe so,
Absolutely.
yes.
Because
Yes,
they
I
have
believe
to-
that's already been,
Right, and I think
Established.
Lydia is going to be a liaison on their
Uh-huh.
development review team. And the village board will have to pass a law,
Uh-huh.
a resolution or whatever it takes to provide them with water and sewer.
thank you. So I will draft that up and circulate it for you guys to review and do what you guys do and make sure the language and context is correct.
And if you want, I'll circulate my letter to you guys.
Yeah, be helpful.
And I have the site plan.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn by John,
Second,
second,
Michael.
Michael.
Second from Michael.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Very